So thanks for taking the time. Lackluster in the studio.
Thanks for
He
having
is
me.
real. He has emerged from the shadows,
Yeah,
clearly armed to the teeth.
I
Uh,
got a couple.
yeah, man. So I just wanted to try to just kind of pick your brain and introduce you to my audience because I know they've never heard of you. I always like to try to give the up and comer guys an opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, just I'm a giver.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
I don't know where I'd be without this opportunity. So.
I don't know either. Probably not losing money on this podcast.
No.
so, so how would you, if you were going to introduce yourself and tell somebody a little bit about you, how would you describe yourself?
Uh, man,
The one you weren't ready for.
I'm not gonna be ready for any of them to be honest. But I don't know. I'll try to do real quick, not boring. I was born in California, moved all over the place in my 30s and 20s, I guess. I was in the military. I got out of the military, joined LA City Fire. I was a medic in the military, so I became a medic for the fire department. I was dual function fire medic. Worked a lot with LAPD. That's kind of where I started really getting a feel for what the cops were like. And there's kind of a head button between the two agencies down there. Maybe not today, I don't know, but down, I was working in South Los Angeles, so there was a little bit of not good vibes between the two agencies, and that was kind of short lived. I took a spill. I had a pretty severe injury that left me bedridden for about 6 months, and I was offered a essentially a chance to resign or take this job at a as an investigator to do fire investigations, and that sounded really boring, so I left it and I jumped onto YouTube years later, actually, um trying to do some gaming content. I don't know, it seems like every guy's first start into internet streaming is gaming content, and then I had my own experience and it turned into this. It just kind of happened, fell in my lap, so that was a huge blessing. um
It's a funny way to describe the experience that you're referring to because I remember it. We'll talk about that in a second, but I
all right.
remember seeing that video. Um, it's that sounds like a very fireman thing to do. Is we don't like you, so we'll make you some quasi policeman in an investigative capacity because we don't like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
cops. I think there's a tension, a natural tension between firemen and policemen, sort of
yeah.
throughout. That dynamic exists, I think, everywhere. Um,
Yes.
so that doesn't surprise me too much. I remember um, back when I was, brainwashed and a government agent, I had a shirt that my wife used to wear that said "Real women marry cops and the rest marry firefighters" or something like that. So I think that's just sort of there's been that sort of natural tension, I think, between the hero classes, we'll call
Yeah,
them, for the beginning from the beginning of time.
yeah, the one joke that I always replay, I didn't make it up, I heard it somebody somewhere, but the one thing that firemen and cops have in common are that they both want to be firemen. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I
we
and,
used to
and
always
I, I
say,
kind of think it's true too. So
yeah. Well, look, I mean, you're always barbecuing, you're washing your truck constantly with the city water. You're basically asleep until time to go out and save the world.
not
You
in
get to
South
slide,
LA.
not in South LA. You get to slide down the world's coolest pole to go to work. Like, I mean,
That's
there's just
true.
not a lot not to hate about when you're in a law enforcement role. I think there's a lot not to. Everybody loves firemen. Nobody dislikes firemen except policemen, and that's because everybody
Uh,
dislikes policemen.
I've had some interesting stories that I don't think I can say on air, but I'll have to tell you afterwards. There's some
Yeah, for
explicit
sure.
language and contentious topics.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but yeah, yeah, not everybody likes firemen. Yeah.
Yeah, but you got a taste though, right? So it's
Yeah, yeah.
so you didn't love LA, I guess, in general, or otherwise you probably wouldn't be where you are now. So
Yeah, I was born and raised there. And other than my military career, I stayed there until my mid 30s, and it is, it's a high desert. There's no water. It's always yellow. There's no green, no like no natural deciduous trees or anything. And I think I was born to be in the woods. So yeah, I moved to Colorado, and I thought it was going to be what I wanted, but it wasn't. It was just another high desert and just basically California all over again, both in looks and environment and people, socially and everything else. Uh, and now I'm in West Virginia. So yeah,
Hey, West by God. Well, that, I guess, I didn't expect to learn something so fundamental and so profound in such an early, you know, timeline into this interview, but I thought that everybody was thirsty in LA because of the Kardashians, and it turns out it's just that there's no water.
yeah,
So
it's
I
just
had no
no water.
idea
Yeah,
that
no,
was the issue.
yeah.
So when I first saw your video, I remember. I don't think that I saw that Colorado Springs. Was it Colorado Springs?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think
Mhm.
I saw that like when you posted it. I think what happened was I came across your channel and I thought I was intrigued by one of the videos. And then I did the thing where you go back and you look at somebody's catalog. And I
Sure.
did find my way to this Colorado Springs video. And I don't remember whether the title was suggestive, like this was my first, interaction or whatever. But I just remember that you were doing something very innocent. I think you were videoing a medical call or something next door, and it became contagious, and it was like a contempt of cops situation. And I remember looking at your channel at that point and seeing that your first foray was sort of into the gaming because you still had some gaming stuff up
Yeah, yeah.
at that point. And I was like, it seems like this thing was a catalyst that changed everything.
It
Uh,
was.
and so, yeah, if you don't mind, just for people who, because this is 4, 5, 6 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, just sort of share your experience. I know you've probably shared some of that on the Cop Talk Live interview you did, but just for people who haven't seen that or wouldn't even watch a show called that,
Yeah.
maybe maybe you can share.
Yeah, sure. I so yeah, at the time I was doing, man, I had a really weird contract with a company called Tencent, which is basically like the Chinese Google. It's massive. They're huge. They own, if Google owns everything, Tencent owns everything else, and in the world essentially. Um, and they contracted me to stream on some platform they were trying to build in the US to take Twitch and YouTube revenue, and it failed miserably. But I got out in the nick of time because David Nelson from CSPD showed up next door. Well, I technically I called them, but at the time, so I was playing video games. It was kind of miserable. I was going through a lot of stuff in life, like personal stuff. I was a single dad, had full custody of my daughter, was living alone, had no family, nothing in Colorado Springs. It was just really kind of a miserable situation. Um, other than having my daughter, that was pretty sick. But uh, doing all this gaming stuff, the guy next door, he was kind of lost about himself as well and needed a job. So I hooked him up with this Chinese company, gonna pay you to play video games. And all he did was drink with the money. And so he ended up trying to, or he was essentially sending out like goodbye letters. He was gonna say goodbye for forever. And it is, which is why I called. And I might have gone over there, save for it being 2 or 3 in the morning. I can't recall. Maybe it was a
And you
little
had your
later
kid,
because,
yeah.
but yeah, but by the time they got there, it was daylight. So it might
Oh,
have been a little later than that, or earlier, or late, whatever. And he was saying that he had a firearm with him. And I'm not going into that situation by myself. So I ended up calling. They came over. I welcomed them into my house through my backyard, showed them around. Hey, he smokes out here. Da da da. These are his habits. He'll probably be outside pretty soon. This and that. And my intentions were just to get him some help. Knock on the door. Hey, man, what's going on? Let's take you just to the hospital and get you checked out. Something. And they geared up, full riot gear, and did a full stack on the door. And after helping him for half an hour, so I thought, to raid this guy's house, apparently, um, they took issue with me filming what they were going to do next, which appeared to be kick in the door and like, I don't know, flashbang or something. I don't, who knows what they would have done if I wasn't filming. But um, they started yelling at me, and I had been watching, Clash with Bao.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Yeah,
He just got
so
arrested at the Karen Reed thing, right?
yeah, he
Yeah.
did. Yeah, and the buffer zone is no more, or
Yeah.
it's
Wow. Turns out.
smaller or something. Yeah, Clash with Bao, James Freeman, Johnny Five O, a bunch of the old school guys back in, Jeff Gray, back in 2017 to 2019. I'd been watching quite a bit, and they had molded me in more ways than I really knew, and kind of changed the way that I had thought. Because, as you can imagine, with military experience, with being in the fire department, I had always grown up on the side of the state in public school systems. Everything was about the state, allegiance to the state,
Sure.
and I saw nothing wrong with it. I don't think anybody ever pointed out anything wrong with it. That hadn't even breached my thought process until seeing some of these videos. And at first I think I was just watching because it was like, whoa, you can do that. Like,
Yeah.
and because
You don't have to just do what they tell you every time.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy. And like it because yeah, I think it just kind of saturated and steeped for a while, and then when it happened, it was just like, I don't know, it was like, and I'm sure it feels this way to most people too. When they have an interaction that goes sour, it's just like a lit fuse went off, and I was done. I wasn't gonna take it anymore, and I let him know in not so kind words, and yeah, just editing it, putting it. Well, I when I was in Iraq, I edited all of our like footage of combat, and I so I had a little bit of experience, put out a little bit of an edit. Looking back from today, it's like, oh, it's terrible. Um, but for then it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted, and it went really well. So I just kept going with it and left that Chinese company, and now it's evolved into this crazy thing. It's weird.
Did they end up? Was there any enforcement action taken against you as a result, or is it just kind of like a piss and battle that just
No
ended?
enforcement against me at all. Um, but the neighbor, he's good. The last I heard from him, he's actually sober, and he's
Oh,
doing
good.
well. He's got a good job. Wears a suit and tie. I don't envy him, but at least he's doing good. But so that's excellent. I had no charges, nothing against me. David Nelson was the officer that peed his panties or whatever in my presence, and I filed a complaint against him, and they were sustained, but they can't let me know what happened. But now he runs his own private investigating firm out of Colorado Springs, so he's not with the department
Whoa!
anymore. But I
What a
imagine he just retired because I think he had like 30 years on.
what a
So
what a coinky dink. So you won't say it, so I'll say it. But thank you for saving a life. It sounds like that you at least had some substantial involvement in saving your neighbor's life, and you saved the state of Colorado some money on
yeah,
another couple years of pension. It sounds
yeah, for real.
like. What? So you had mentioned that you basically had this. I guess I'd call it more than anything a benefit of the doubt that you always gave to the state. Be sort of, I guess, I don't know if loyalty to the state is the right way to say it, but just that you didn't maybe see the things that you see now. I've noticed in my own sort of trajectory that the further that I get away from government employment, the more militant I become in my attitude. I have to be really careful about it because
Sure.
you can go too far in not just as a human being, you can go too far in sort of not giving people that are other human beings that are just trying to survive the benefit of the doubt sometimes. But I've found that I trust less and less, ask more and more questions. I'm suspicious of more, and my overall attitude towards the government is more militant than it was even a year ago.
Yeah,
Is that something that you've experienced too?
yeah, definitely. And to be completely frank, my wife, she she's not real into this. We live on a small homestead. She likes to take care of the chickens and plant stuff, and that's her deal. And and so sometimes I'll come home enraged, and I'll talk about what happened in today's thing and this and that. Can you believe it? And she'll talk me down, but it's actually quite interesting because she contends with my ideas. Sometimes I assert that somebody else might be evil, or that what they've done is extremely wrong, and she's very capable of helping me turn inward, notice when I'm projecting, uh, because I'm fallible, and sometimes I can't help but to have I don't know if pity is the right word, empathy, sympathy for some of the officers that I know are maybe not doing it out of ego or evil or whatever the case may be, and it might just be this is how they were taught and they think it's right.
Yeah.
Not that that makes it right, but it certainly helps me have a little bit of sympathy for them, because I know that that is essentially where I came from. Because if it wasn't for these channels, which is why I think like a part of what you do, what I do, what all those guys before me did, is so important. Because if it wasn't for them, I would have been the guy on police activity saying FAFO and all that fun stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it's quite interesting. It's been a wild evolution of.
That's it. My wife doesn't really. So you're saying that your wife sort of inserts humanity where you find none for you, and not necessarily plays devil's advocate, but just sort of reminds you that look, these are people, and they're
Yeah.
flawed, and that's sort of her. So she's your sort of safe sounding board that you can rely on to kind of back to get you backed away from the edge of the cliff.
In
Um,
absolutely everything she is, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I guess that's a nice way of saying that she controls your life. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
No,
She's gonna like
hopefully
you.
she'll see this. Uh, it's a nice way of saying that she sticks you down in the basement with your guns, and then she takes your pants and wears them around the house. Just so,
Yeah.
I mean, you can get all kinds of wild with your imagination.
Yeah.
I know that there's a substantial amount of our audience that overlaps, obviously, and most of them, I would say a good strong 85-90% of them hate the police no matter what they do.
Yeah.
They find no good in any police officer. I don't. I have personal relationships with many police officers that I admire and respect. And the reason that I know that police officers, simply because they don't know the law, and I often say that police officers understand the law just well enough to misapply it, or
Mhm.
to break it. I know for a fact that it is not always born out of this animosity for the public, because I was 5 years post my law enforcement career and sitting in law school in criminal procedure and realizing, holy shit, do you know the
I was
number of
doing that
times?
wrong.
Yeah, the
Because how
number of
long were you
times
an
that I've
officer?
realized that I violated somebody's rights simply because I didn't understand the Terry frisk, and the separation from a Terry stop and a Terry frisk, and
Mhm.
what's required to create the bridge to those two things. And I remember I'm sitting in law school, having had a 10-year law enforcement career, thinking, my God, I
Yeah.
had less than 10 uses of force, well less. I mean, probably 5 or 6 in a 10-year career. And I mean, we did a use of force report for every single time that we even raised our guns above a low ready, or
Yeah.
anytime we had to use any sort of active force, active resistance, we had to do a use of force report. So I know that I wasn't the type of officer that just willy-nilly violated people's rights because I thought it was fun. And
Yeah.
so because I know that about me, I know that not all these guys are out here just doing it because they want to. They're doing it because they're ignorant. And they're
Yeah.
ignorant maybe by choice, or maybe because they're ignorant of their ignorance. There's like layers to this thing. It's levels to it, as the kids would say.
Yeah.
Not any of my kids, just kids I've met have told me it's levels to it. And I'm starting to understand what that means.
Yeah, I think it took me a long time to realize that that is an angle for some people, and here's why. And I kind of brought this up on Izzo's show a little bit. I touched on it I did a live stream when I hit 1 million subscribers, and I said I was going to do this video, and I had this theory that I was going to talk about, and I still haven't like hashed it out properly. But it's actually something that I've gone through a lot of therapy for in post Iraq experience. And to get there, I got to tell a little bit more history. I didn't join the army because I wanted like to fight for freedom or anything. I joined because I had no idea what to do with my life, and was just kind of drifting. And it turned out to be a great experience, but in that experience, I went to the recruiter. Hey, what can I do here? And they're, hey, here's a list of things. They lied to me. I became a medic. That was cool, but I initially had asked uh, for something that would give me a career when I got out, so that I could at least, find some stability, make some money, and have a life. And they told me healthcare specialist, and hey, as long as it isn't a combat job, I'm good to go. And turns out I was a combat medic for 1st Infantry Division, went straight to Iraq, like right out of boot camp. So that was totally not expected. But I went from the mentality of I don't want to do any sort of combat related jobs to, well, now I'm in the army and I'm with the infantry. Like, I wonder what it's like to shoot someone. And it became this fascination of like, like, well, now I have a legal right. I have the legal authority or whatever to do that. And I just kind of wonder what it would feel like, and I got out of Iraq uh, years later and suffered from mental catastrophe, PTSD, they call it, and went through tons and tons of therapy. And that was one of the recurring issues, that I had let my brain think that way, and it was something that I couldn't control. It just happened. And now that I've been through it, seen through a lot of cognitive dissonance and all that fun stuff, I have an idea that a lot of the younger cops probably go there too. I think it's very common. I know a lot of the guys that I was in Iraq with were like that, and that's why they joined. uh, Others are just like me; they became that way just by chance of, experience. And I can't imagine that young or early 20-year-olds having that much power and weapons don't find themselves in that same pattern of thought.
And I agree with that, because I think I've taken the position. I became a police officer at 23, and I was way too young and way too immature. And I think I've taken the position at this point that you should not be allowed to be a police officer before you're 25 or 30 years old.
I agree.
Just because everything about your life changes over the course of 5-year intervals. I mean, I'm 45 now. I'm not even the person I was at 40 or
Yeah.
35. And I can't even identify with the person I was at 25. So I think a lot of that has to do with it. And I think that, people get all worked up over education. One of the most prevalent comments that I see in the comment section is, it takes, I don't know,
Oh,
whatever
the
whatever
hairdresser.
the thing. Yeah, the hairdresser thing. I don't always, because I've gotten to a place now where I just can't stay in the comments.
Yeah.
One, it's not good for my emotional health, but two, it's too
You
busy.
can't keep up.
It's
Yeah.
dark in there, bro. So I just can't keep up with it. But the truth is this: I spent 16 weeks at the West Virginia State Police Academy. I lived there. I went home on the weekends. It was absolutely brutal, and I learned, not very much about the law.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to think in a way now that I would say is paranoid, and I would say in this idea that sort of everybody wants to kill you kind of thing. And I, you kind of always got to be watching your back and all this stuff. And then when you get out, you go to your department, and then they teach you all of this stuff
And how to
about
think like that even better.
right, or more specifically, how to do it at this department. And we're going to teach you all the things that this place didn't teach you, because they teach you how to think like a cop. We're going to teach you how to be a cop.
Yeah.
And so then you get like these, and so you sort of abandon everything that you learned in the police academy in your FTO training program. But the most important thing that I think people miss when they bring this up is that basically everything that I talk about on this channel, I learned in a single semester in my third semester of law school in a class called criminal procedure. And that was roughly 15 weeks for 3 times a week for an hour. And if I combine all that time together, it's the same exact amount of time that I spent in the police academy, 16, weeks at 5 days a week at 12 to 14 hours a day. It has nothing to do with the amount of time that you spend. It's what's being taught and by whom that
Yeah.
matters. And it's not really about, and I'll be honest, and this was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Do you feel like you've learned more about the stuff that you make content about just by virtue of making content? Because I feel like I'm a smarter, I shouldn't say it like that. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I feel like I'm a more informed attorney after making content about constitutional law for a year than I was before I entered this.
Yeah. I would definitely say that's true for me as well. Because there are so many different scenarios where there are things happening that I've never seen or heard of, never would have thought would
Yeah.
happen, and I wouldn't even know the first place to look for the answer of how to sort this out, whether it be legally or morally, whatever. So there's a lot of research on my end, and I didn't go to law school. Um, in fact, I quit college to join the military, mostly because of a car fire. But yeah.
Well, we're not just going to gloss over that detail. Hold on a minute. Hold on, guys. Give me a minute. I'm going to get him back on track. All right, we're going to talk about this car fire.
Yeah. I bought, it was so dumb. It was an old 1987 Volkswagen Golf GT, the one with pinstripes on the side, pretty sick. And I bought it from a buddy. He had put subwoofers in it, left the amp, took the subwoofers, and the wires crossed, lit a sweatshirt on fire. But that went out really quick. But then 2 weeks later, or maybe it was like a month later, very soon after, I was driving and somehow the vacuum system like clogged or something, and it started just spewing oil all over the engine bay without me knowing it. And I was delivering pizza, and it caught fire in the middle of a pizza delivery, and yeah, so that was that.
As a result of the vacuum system. So, guys, you hear that? Read between the lines. Tea leaves. Volkswagens literally suck and they will kill you.
Literally, yes, yes. Oh
They
man,
literally suck and they will kill you. And that doesn't have anything to do with the emissions lawsuit they lost of billions of dollars a
exactly.
couple
Oh
years ago.
man, and dude, their graveyard for all those cars that they had to recall was just outside of, or their at least one of the graveyards was just outside of Colorado Springs. It was just a desert filled with brand new Volkswagens. Insane.
Wow.
But
That's funny that you say that because I remember during COVID, and I've got a little bit. I don't know how much you know about my background, but I've got a little bit of a. I actually stopped practicing law in when the pandemic happened, and I opened an ice cream truck, and I went to my son and I opened a trucking company, and I left the practice of law and I opened a trucking company, and I went out and I started driving a vehicle because the courts were closed, and I was new in my practice, and the courts were closed because I went to law school late and the courts were closed. And so I started driving a truck. And so I have a CDL. I'm still CDL. And then I later became the CDL prosecutor. So I understand like all that as
uh,
far as the law and all that stuff when it comes to CDL. And I remember part of what I did was I had a car trailer and I hauled cars. And I remember there were just lots and lots and lots of these vehicles that were basically missing like one chip or one piece or something that they were waiting on from overseas that they couldn't get because of the pandemic. And they were just complete vehicles just there. Couldn't sell them, couldn't do anything with them. And it was just a crazy time. But it's funny that you say that because they don't really know what to do with that stuff when they when they
yeah,
they have to dispose of these vehicles. I wonder what they've done with them at this point.
yeah. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it. Well, I'm kind of curious, but
I'm glad you did the Izzo interview. I was surprised that you did the interview, not because of that's not a statement about you.
Mhm.
It's more of a statement about maybe my improper assumptions about you. And part of that is because you haven't done a lot of sort of putting yourself out there for your audience, at least not. I mean, for the most part, I think your channel's been considered a faceless channel up until I think recently, and save for a couple instances
In
that
in
would
fact,
serve
the
as exceptions.
I think the first 2 years was face all the time with green screen, and,
Oh,
and one day, I don't remember who told me, they were like, "Hey, it's so much easier, just use your voice, they don't care." And back then, YouTube was a different beast 5 years ago. 5
yeah.
years, oh my gosh, I'm gonna reveal a little secret, but they would demonetize every single video I put out for 3 years straight. Every single video, it didn't matter, it was just instant yellow, and then you had to send it in to review and pray that it would turn green, and you can't, and back then, they had some detection thing, I don't think it's there anymore, but you couldn't upload the same video twice. So I created this system where every time I made a video, I would make 3 versions. Each one was just 3 seconds longer of black screen at the end.
Okay.
And I
Just
would
change the metadata, change the title, change
just
what you've saved it as in your computer, that kind of thing.
no, I would just make it 3 seconds longer each
Okay.
video, but it's still the same video.
Yeah.
It's just 3 seconds longer, 3 of those, and upload all 3 of them, and then send them all in for review at the same time, and if they all got denied, I would delete them all, add 3 seconds to each one, and re-upload them until it turned green, and sometimes it would take 15 uploads until somebody
Holy cow.
approved it, because I knew, like, there's nothing in here that, like, I've blurred everything, like, I don't blur anymore, I don't, but it used to be, like, if there was somebody getting handcuffed, had to be blurred. The entire screen had to be completely blurred, can't show a handcuff. And then they started making improvements to the guidelines where you could show an arrest with mild violence or mild resistance and stuff like that. Now you can show like blood and shootings and all sorts of stuff sometimes. Sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because if you're actually intellectually honest in your uploading strategy when you're clicking all those boxes, the truth is every video we put up has all that shit in it.
Yeah.
And they ask you all these questions and I always say no, but it's actually kind of telling because it seems like that those were the things that they were more focused on a couple years back. They don't even check it, I don't think anymore. Now I've had a couple brushes with them. I had a video where I did that was a it was the Rusk County, Texas shooting. It was actually probably my first video that really kind of took off, and the video that sort of really made me think about the power of YouTube was this video about Sergeant Shane Iverson, who is a Rusk County deputy who shot and killed a guy named Timothy Randall, um, essentially for with no justification, but essentially for nothing. I mean, it was are you familiar with the stop? This one was so essentially what you have is you have this guy who is alleged to have run a stop sign, and there's much more to it than that. But basically, the deputy Iverson comes up behind the kid, and he's not a kid, he's 28, but he's a kid. So he pulls him over. And he says, you ran that stop sign back there. And he goes, no, I came to a complete stop at that stop sign. And he said, no, you didn't. And he immediately is like, step out. And so my video was because everybody talks about Pennsylvania versus MEMS. Nobody knows what it means. Nobody knows what it stands for. It's one of the most misunderstood case laws in the history and also misused, misapplied case laws in history. Probably one of the worst decisions in history. But anyway, it's just a shit sandwich all the way around. And so anyway, I wanted to really dive into Pennsylvania versus MEMS. And so
Yeah.
I used this case because that was the sort of him getting him out. It was like it's always a contempt of cop reason. It's an intimidation factor. It's never for officer safety, which is what it's supposed to be about. But anyway, he gets him out and he immediately goes hands on with him and he starts feeling around on him. And the guy's like, what are you doing? And he picks him up, slams him to the ground, and Randall gets up and he starts to run. Well, when he
Oh,
runs,
I know. I
yeah, it
know
shoots,
exact
right?
yeah, 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 yeah. The the
So
the full body cam was just released by
yeah,
Otto and what's his name? Garth.
okay. Yeah, yeah. So that was one of the whole auto protest deal. That was about that case. But what happened with that case that really helped me understand? Well, first of all, the whole point of my story was that um, I edited everything out except the puff of smoke. It
Mhm.
was him. I froze it, him pointing the gun, puff of smoke, and YouTube, it got 10,000. They did basically what they did to your video over that Arkansas pit maneuver that you and John Bryan sued them over. Or that you and John Bryan started working together to try to take care of
Almost.
the copyright strike. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So basically they age restricted me, and so I re-uploaded it and just took out another half second or whatever. But that video let me know how small the world was, even with YouTube, because what happened was that video went out and Timothy Randall's brother or sister, I can't remember which one, saw the video, and nobody was reporting at it. This was last May or June. Nobody was reporting it at the time. It was right after the body cam was ordered released by the judge.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was reporting it. And so he commented on that video and he said, "Thank you for sharing my brother's story," he or she. And so I apologize. I don't remember. So please forgive me if you see this. It's not that you don't matter. I just don't remember whether it was a brother or sister. But right after that, the guy who is the attorney who is suing Rusk County wrote me an email and actually wanted to talk to me about this case. And I don't want to get into it because I don't know how much he wants me to share, how much of it is a part of his strategy. But I realized in that moment, I was like, holy cow, people actually see this.
Yeah.
And since then, I've had so many people who were directly involved in the videos that I was doing. Sonia Massey's family, her father
Yeah, yeah.
commented on my video um, after she was killed. And it was just so many. It's just so amazing how people are connected through YouTube and how small the world is. And I remember when Joseph Oxman reached out to me and wrote me that email, I was so flattered that he thought that I'd done a good breakdown of the video. And he basically said that it had helped him. And I'll say, because this is going to come out, he admitted in a post shooting interview
Mhm.
that he assumed he ran that stop sign. He did not see him run that stop sign. And that was kind of one of the points that I made in the video. It was 800 and some feet away based on the speed and all that
Yeah.
stuff. There's no way he could have seen it. No way.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
have the dash cam. You can't see whether or not he stopped.
yeah.
Can't.
And so but he admitted, and I have it again, I'm not going to go too much in detail, but I have a copy of the Texas Rangers report.
Yeah, yeah.
And he admitted in a post shooting interview that he did not see him run that stop sign, that he couldn't have, that he just assumed he did based on how fast his vehicle, based on his speed of his vehicle at the time that he finally saw it. He
So it's an
assumed there was a
illegal
stop sign
stop.
violation. It's an illegal stop.
So it's essentially.
Well, they took the position. Here's the position they took. They took the position that the Texas Rangers took the position that Iverson attempting to stop him and Texas law requiring you immediately to pull to the right. And because Randall pulled to an off road to the left, that was a sufficient basis for the stop.
It's backwards.
Yeah. So they're taking the position that him going the wrong way in response to the traffic stop was a reason to do a traffic stop. And so it's just, it was home cooked essentially
Yeah.
from the start. That investigation was. But anyway, what's been your experience about sort of the way that people are connected and how small YouTube is,
Yeah, man.
or
Well,
how small the world is when people connect through YouTube is what I'm really trying to ask.
yeah, I think it's pretty wild, and again, I think that goes to why what we do is so important. Because not only would I not be in this mind space, which I think is important for me to be in, uh, but yeah, it's introduced me to tons of different people, tons of new experiences. It's really, really opened up my life, and allowed me to network with some big, some pretty big heavy hitters. Um, and I don't know, I don't think I have an excellent answer for you on that one, but what I will say is so far I've never been seen or no recognized in public. Sorry, I'm terrible with words, by the way, which is absolutely funny. I
No,
can write all day and script really well, but you put me on a live stream like this and I'm gonna fumble the ball every single time.
no,
My
you're doing great, man.
My wife, on the other hand, she has a way with words. She can talk for days, and she has a channel, and she's been recognized in public. She hasn't even made a video in 5 years.
What's her
And
channel? Give her a shout out.
well, it's under her maiden name, Jennifer Moleski, Moleski.
Okay. I
But
thought you were going to tell me she was Lena the Plug or something. I'm like, of course she's getting recognized. No, no, Jennifer Moleski. Okay, so
yeah,
she
but
has a
she's
way
only
with
got
words.
100,000 subscribers. So a lot of the viewers aren't going to like her, and that's fine. But uh, yeah,
Well, she hasn't
but
made a video in 5 years. She doesn't care what people think.
no, she really doesn't. She really doesn't. But uh, which is good, especially for the type of content she was making. So
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. I have not been recognized in public, which, but I don't have a large.
I think you will
I,
before I do. Well,
I,
mostly because I live out in the sticks. Like it's 35 minutes to
yeah,
anything.
yeah.
So
Well, West Virginia people are not exactly. Well, I mean, I'm sure there are people. I know there are people who watch from West Virginia because I get emails from them and
yeah,
comments from them. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a different. Man. I mean, there's a reason you live there. It's a different way of life, right?
yeah,
So it's they're not maybe super consumed with this sort of information gathering.
no,
But I noticed that it is. I've had people come to the prosecutor's office that I used to work at looking for me. I have had people come specifically to find me, but I do a pretty good job of staying, out of the fray.
yeah,
But I've had a lot of people try to contact me, call my phone, that kind of stuff. I don't have a large well, it's a much larger now, the subscriber following in the last couple months, but I do have, like over 1 million people that sort of are like recurring viewers of mine.
yeah.
So I think I've got a lot of people that watch my content that aren't subscribers, which guys, subscribe.
I
I
I
need
don't
I need the
understand
numbers.
that, but yeah, for some reason, same here. I think it's like 80% of the people who watch the videos are not subscribed. It's very
Yeah,
odd.
that's probably by the time one all fleshes all the way out and YouTube sort of drains it as much as it can down to 5 or 6% click through rate. I think it's about 80/20
Yeah.
by the time that settles down. Um, what were you surprised? So I want to be clear. I really like Dominic Izzo's channel mainly because it's cop friendly, but it's also not.
Yeah.
I like anybody who is willing to say the truth, even where it's not popular. I don't agree with everything he says.
Sure.
Never
Same.
talk to him. But the only person I agree with all the time is me. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. You know what I mean? And that's
And
because
even that's hard. Yeah.
it's hard, but I know that the efforts that I go to be intellectually honest, and I trust me.
Yeah.
I know what kind of work I'm putting into something. I don't rush the judgment. I take the facts. I try to figure out what the truth is because that's what I think ultimately is the only loyalty we actually owe
Yeah.
is to the objective truth. So what was your experience like with him? Like I said, I was surprised that you did the interview, but I was glad because I think it's important for his audience to be exposed to you, and I think it's important for your audience to be exposed to him.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean the interview was great. I like Dominic. I think he's funny. I think he's got a way with words. He should be a speaker. Again, I don't agree with everything he says. I got lambasted with emails like, "How can you platform this?" Whatever. Yeah, I have only been asked a handful of times to do interviews or podcasts or debates, whatever the case may be. And maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I've made it a personal policy specifically because I have a difficult time with public speaking or just speaking live and storytelling and all that fun stuff in person, that I would not turn down an offer. And so I just say yes to anything. Really, I'll go on any show. I'm not going to count anybody out. But
Oh, good. We're going to do a drag show in San
oh,
Francisco. No, I'm joking. Lackluster will be. We haven't determined what his stage name is going to be, but he will be there because he doesn't say no,
oh,
guys. He
well,
doesn't say no.
Ethan's got to go to
Remember.
yeah,
um,
only he does not go.
that's interesting because when you look at your content, that isn't something that you would. The idea that you struggle. So is it here, and you have a hard time with the filter? Um,
Yeah,
is that?
I have a hard time recalling words. I think it has a lot to do with PTSD, and some of the after effects of that. So I don't remember having this sort of struggle in my earlier life, but I need to take more frequent pauses than I think I should. And yeah, word recall, piecing together a story, not droning on too long. I think sometimes for me to take a big story and to condense it down very quickly to something that's palatable and easy to digest very quickly, I have a difficult time doing that unless I can write it down and look at it,
Huh.
see it. And then most of the time I have to write it all out and then rearrange it and move things and place them. And apparently I'm really good at doing that because it's working, but just live, I don't have the capabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because your videos are so well done and they're so highly produced. Like I'm so jealous of your ability to edit. I mean, I think I make a different kind of content. Mine's very much off the cuff, and
Yeah.
it's really weird how we can take the exact same scenario, literally the Senatobia, Mississippi. We basically made a we made a video about the exact same thing, and our videos are just different,
Yeah.
um, completely different. And I think probably arrived at the same conclusion because you know when you're right, you're right. And when you're wrong, you're wrong.
Exactly.
Uh, but yeah, it's really interesting that but that it kind of makes sense though, because if you have the ability to write it, then you can script it and then you can, then you can control how long it takes to edit it and all that stuff and put it out. And then that makes a lot of sense. But one of these days I'm going to talk to, let me just say this to the people who would email you, you know, part of the problem that we have with law enforcement is that they think they know better than you. And they start with the assumption that they can't learn anything from you.
Mhm.
And they're very much of us versus them. And I would suggest that to anybody who would say, well, don't platform anybody that thinks differently than you, you're missing out.
Mhm.
Um, Furthermore, you're demonstrating that if you had the authority of a government official, you would conduct yourself possibly in the same way they do, because you have the power to exclude somebody based simply on their ideology. But who told you that you were right?
Yeah.
And who is the arbiter of right and wrong? And is it not just exactly the same thing for you to assume that you're right about everything and they're wrong about everything, such that they don't even get a platform? And by the way, moreover, that is the most anti-free speech thing I've ever heard of in my life.
Yeah, and I was gonna say the same thing, and I know that I'm not the government, and I can't violate. Well, I mean, whatever. I'm not gonna violate somebody's free speech rights the way a government can, but
Sure.
uh, but free speech was created for a very specific reason, and it's not because I want to say a thing. It's to hash out very specific ideas, and you can't do that if you can't see the full box. So you have
Yeah.
to understand. You have to be able to understand and defeat your opponent's position to understand why yours is proper. So
Yeah. Well, that's what I said that in a I can't remember which video it was, but I said something to the effect that I'm not I'm not saying they were right. You just have to build the house, and then before you can show how weak the foundation is before you tear it down.
mhm,
And you can't effectively dismantle somebody's argument unless you understand their argument. And you can't understand it if you're not willing to listen to it.
yeah.
And and so I get a lot of people that, I've had a lot of people that just the stuff in the background, like I used to have Trey Gowdy's book up in the background, and I used to
Mhm.
get it so much
Yeah,
flack.
yeah,
People would be, oh my God, well, I know everything I need to know about you because you got a Trey Gowdy book. Well, if you would listen to the things I say, you would find out that Trey Gowdy probably wouldn't watch my content because he assumes the very opposite thing that you assume,
yeah,
you know? And but actually, Trey Gowdy wouldn't do that because you can think whatever you want about Trey Gowdy, but he's the type of person that is a brilliant lawyer who gets all the information before he makes his decision. And the book that I had it's one of in fact, you should read it if you
I
haven't,
remember
if you
you
like to
talking
read.
about it.
It's one of the best books I've ever read on when you can cross examine somebody and it's called Using the Power of Questions to Communicate, Connect, and Persuade. Doesn't Hurt to Ask is the title of the book. Phenomenal book. And then there's another book called Start, Stay, and Leave. Those are two of the best books I've ever read on questions, persuasion, and then decision making. And they're not political at all. Phenomenal books. But yeah, people will. I remember I wear the same blue shirt every video because people don't say anything about it. If I wear anything, if it's got a pattern, if I once made the mistake of wearing a Black Rifle coffee shirt, Jesus,
Oh no.
lover, I got so much flack. Like, people would listen to my content and they would assume based on my positions that I'm this way politically. I'm politically homeless.
Yeah.
I don't feel embraced by either party. I think the extremes of both sides are insane.
Yep.
But it's just so funny that we get this righteous indignation attached to our belief system, and we lose sight of the fact that if everybody got to be in, everybody who's in power has their own version of the way things are supposed to work too, and they're going to make you do what they think is right, and you're not going to like it. So
No.
we have to have a universal standard, and the law is the only thing that applies to everybody, or is
Yeah.
supposed to.
Yeah, supposed to.
But what would you say is the biggest change that you've noticed about the landscape of law enforcement since YouTube has sort of rose to prominence in this space of, and now it's low hanging fruit. I mean, we enjoy views that other niches on YouTube just don't get.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of views. What has changed about it that you've noticed?
Man, I don't know, because like every once in a while, I notice a trend where I'll see multiple departments getting it kind of right, still being cranky pants about it,
Yeah.
but still getting it right and saying, yeah, he has the right to do that. We can't do anything about it, unfortunately. Which whatever, but at least they're doing the right thing and following what the laws are supposed to, I guess. But then other days it just turns right back to, how do they not know to
Yeah.
not do that, just on the very basic stuff? So very hard question to answer on that.
Do you think that there's been maybe a rise in, I kind of think there's just pockets of the world that are just not exposed to it.
Yeah.
And those are where you see it's almost like if you flash back 5 years ago, there's the same sort of problems you saw 5 years ago, but it's only like in little pockets. If you get to a place like, for instance, Colorado really had a hard couple years because their law enforcement, and
With
Phoenix,
Loveland.
Arizona.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, so certain areas, Minnesota is a place where it's having a really hard time. So like there are certain places you can sort of like, but I see what you mean, because it's also like, we have such a high turnover in our news cycle that it's like things
Mhm.
get thrown into the outrage blender and then 2 weeks people are on to something else. And so you
If
kind of
they
can
last for 2
see,
weeks, yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You kind of can see people sort of falling back into these lazy intellectual habits.
Mhm.
So, to your point, an agency that might have had their shit together after they had a really bad public incident, maybe they get a new chief or somebody retires, or maybe they just forget. It's
Mhm.
kind of like losing weight and eating healthy, and then all of a sudden you decide that you live really close to McDonald's again, and so you're just going to change your ways and sort of forget, and before you know it you've put on 20 pounds. And that's sort of the same parallel that I think happens in law enforcement. And so that's kind of what I was getting at. Have you noticed any? Do you think there's more people that are aware of the cameras and aware that they could be YouTube famous if they're not careful?
Yeah, I think so. I've received a lot of videos where officers will talk about specific channels. I've heard mine mentioned quite a few times, like, oh, I don't want to end up on Lackluster, or like things like that. I was gonna ask you if you had any idea, because it's something that I don't remember the answer. If I have researched it, if like what the average span of employment for an officer is it on the lower side or on the higher side? 'Cause-
I would probably just be speculating. I think that, yeah, I wouldn't have really a reference point. I could ask Chat GPT. It could probably tell me.
yeah,
Let's do it. It'll be fun.
yeah, because
Um,
and the only reason I ask is um because it seems like most of the guys our age get it. The old dogs, they can't learn new tricks unless they're still sharp, and then the young guys, uh is kind of a dice roll, but for the most part still haven't learned it. So if there's a, I know there's a high rate of attrition as far as like gypsy bouncing around to different departments, but if the average span of employment for officers is a low number, then I imagine that because you get so many new guys that are so
Right.
young, it just might be a problem that never fixes itself.
Right. Well, and I've made this point in so the first answer that I got was that 20 to 30 years, but I think it thought I was asking it, how long does the average police officer take to
Retire.
retire?
Sure.
So I ask it to consider all the people that start and stop. 7 to 10 years is what the answer
Wow.
is that I can come up with. But and 2020 perf report found that nearly 30% of police officers leave within their first 5 years, and a BJS study noted that only 1 in 3 officers hired at age 25 actually stay long enough to retire with full benefits. So it's kind of all over the board, I think, to answer your question. But here's what I think is actually the problem, and there's and I know that you talked about this with Izzo about the qualified immunity and police unions were the two biggest things that, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. But one of the serious issues I think is that the people that are making command decisions, and this would make sense from a firefighter's perspective too, are the same people that were knocking people in the head
Yeah.
in 2000,
Right.
right? And 2005. And so, depending on what, did you see that?
Woo!
Every time I put my thumb
Oh,
up, it does that.
you do that. Doesn't work for me apparently.
And so, depending on what the person's career trajectory is, because maybe you didn't deal with this too much in, because I think even your captains and lieutenants in the fire service are still running calls, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
in law enforcement, once you make sergeant, you're basically approving people's reports and you're not really doing anything,
Yeah, yeah.
um and no offense to any sergeants out there that are actually working, but what I'm saying is that it depends on your career trajectory, because police officers are a jealous species of people and immature just sort of as a group
Sure.
subculturally. But I remember that anybody that tested fast, that did well on the civil service exam, and let's say they spent 2 or 3 years in patrol, and then within that period of time they were in a specialized unit, or maybe they made sergeant in 3 years, or corporal in 2 and 3, sergeant in 5, lieutenant in 8. The same thing was always said about those people, which is that they've never been a policeman. Well, what you mean is that they can pass the civil service test and they're not going to be a senior patrolman for the next 25 years, right?
Yeah.
And so, but depending on what their trajectory was, if they're a person who took 15 years to get rank, their perspective on how to police the streets is going to be totally different than a
Right.
person who got sergeant in 5,
Yeah.
right? And so, and that may or may not be because more people are right about the fact that they never actually worked any patrol or whatever. They were always in specialized unit. But the point is, it's the old school guys that are like your cop type people that are making these command decisions. And life was different. They're out of touch with the
Mhm.
camera ridden American public. And so they're making decisions that they don't fully understand the gravity of. And it's going to take guys that come to command authority over the next 20 years that are going to be cognizant of what needs to change. And we're in for a long curve,
Yeah.
probably 10 to 15 years before you're going to see any substantial deference to cameras and accountability and transparency, I think.
Yeah, I've worked with some of the insurance companies that insure the I guess I can't remember if they insure the actual agency or through the union or whatever, but they basically cover the lawsuits, and they were asking how do we lower these in the amount of these incidents, and basically trying to figure out like how do we deal with you people. And it's
Well,
like,
I got an answer if you talk to him again.
oh
So
yeah.
here's what a lot of people suggest to me, that what would solve this problem is that each officer needs to have liability
Oh
insurance.
yeah, I love it.
Well, I do too, but it's not. It's a band-aid on a gunshot wound. It's not a systemic
No,
solution.
no,
The reason
I
go
think
ahead,
it's
sorry.
one ingredient to a big cake.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. I because here's what we have to change is we have to change the insurance lobby. We
Mhm.
have to have the underwriters say, from now on, we're not going to cover this bill where your officers do intentional things that violate
Yeah.
rights. So the underwriting requirements have to change in the same way that life insurance policies for somebody who's a pilot might exclude aviation accidents, or right. You're going to have insurance companies say, because the truth is, even where you get
That's
qualified
interesting.
immunity stripped, we we all celebrate that, except it doesn't matter because the
They
party
get indemnified, yeah.
they get indemnified, and so the county is going to pay the insurance company is going to stand in and pay that
Yeah.
on behalf of the officers. So you need insurance companies that are going to say, we're going to deny this claim for intentional conduct that goes outside of your policy.
Yeah.
So we're going to hold your officers responsible for knowing the policy, and where they deviate this far outside, we're going to deny those claims, and then you're going to have to go to the taxpayer. Because what's happening now is that the insurance company will do what they do when you have a car accident, and they'll just gradually increase the premium over the course of the next 5 years, and nobody's going to know the difference. Oh, it's just economics and the cost of living and blah 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 blah, and everything goes up in price, and the taxpayer doesn't pay attention to it because it's incrementalism.
Yeah.
Incrementalism is the most powerful process in life. Doesn't matter what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Nothing happens all at once, and the taxpayer's not going to notice an increase or be scrutinous of an increase in insurance premium over the course of 10 years. But if you start denying these claims and you got to go hit them up and hit city council up for $5 million because your guy screwed up royally, and that's pressure from the insurance lobby, that will make a difference.
Yeah. And that guy won't return to the streets. More than likely.
Right. Right. Because now there's a real incentive. Right now,
Yeah.
there's no Steve Young. This is going to be a little bit of a diversion that won't make any sense until the end.
Sure.
But several years back, maybe 10, 12 years ago, the referees for the NFL went on strike, right? And the they had substitute referees. And Steve Young made the point that there's no elasticity of demand for these referees. And so the reason is because people don't stop watching the NFL because of bad officiating. And so essentially you don't matter,
Yeah.
referee. You're just a guy that people are going to be mad at no matter what you do. So there's no elasticity to the demand for the NFL product based on what you're doing. And so, as long as there's no consequences to police officers' actions, no real consequences where they have to answer tough questions from the public, and that's why the differences in these cases are when the public calls these people to the carpet,
Mm-hmm.
because there's the elasticity of demand. As
Yeah.
long as you indemnify them and there's no real consequences for what they do, you will not see this change.
Yeah, that's an interesting side of it. I hadn't thought of, especially the lobby part. I'm gonna have to do some heavy thinking on that because essentially what I told the guy was just tell the cops to fucking ignore people. But
Well, look, so here's the thing, man. Everybody has different analytical skills. Like my kid, for instance, is almost 26, and he can look at a car and instantly understand how it works. And I can do that with social constructs, but I can't do it. Like if somebody gave me a Lego house and knocked it all down and said, rebuild this. I never fucked with Legos when I was a kid. It just wasn't part of the puzzles that I was drawn to.
yeah,
But people fascinate me. And why people do what they do and why we treat each other in certain ways. Like the human condition and human psychology fascinates me and interests me more than anything else. And that's why I've got social intelligence, but I don't have like a technical mind. Jiu-jitsu is very difficult for me, and I take a longer way around learning a technique because my mind is not mathematically technical, and it's a lot of geometry. Understanding jiu-jitsu is really just a lesson in
yeah, it's a
geometry
lot
and
of
understanding
levers and
leverage, and
yeah,
yeah. And so it's more difficult for me than somebody who was, a math whiz or somebody that understood technical mathematics better than me. It's just not naturally intuitive for me. It's just not something I understand. And so if somebody asks me a complex question about something, I might not get it, but a complex question about that, it's like, no, you just deconstruct this, and it makes sense, right?
yeah.
So, how have you noticed the way that your videos impact um, scenarios? I got my first taste. I don't necessarily want to go public with it, so I'll just say, I did a recent video, and I know for a fact that the leaders in the city saw my video and
Mm-hmm.
felt some type of way about it. It's the first time that I've actually noticed that my channel had an impact on a city government or a municipality of some sort.
Yeah.
When did you notice that your channel was starting to make a difference?
I think the first time was when lawyers started reaching out and saying, "Hey, I want to help that person," and then seeing them actually start cases and moving on in that direction. But I think the I'll tell you the scariest one. I did a story. It's got to be 2 or 3 years ago now. The sheriff responded to it and said that it was a professionally edited video, which I do not consider myself a professional editor. I I I think I'm like mediocre at best, and that's honest. I'm not trying to be like coy or whatever. I just don't put a ton of effort into it like I've seen some other people. It actually scared me to have them respond, you know. Uh now granted, I think I might attribute some of that to um previous PTSD issues, things like that, probably play a big role. But I think for the most part, it's been really scary in that sense. The only other times I've seen, I think the Cleveland Heights up in Ohio, they actually changed one of their laws, which was a
Hmm.
real big hit. Oh, I think when officers are terminated, um, those are big changes I can get behind. Um,
Hmm.
I I don't recall the exact meaning of your or the exact wording of your
Well, it was kind
question.
of my question was, when did you realize, like, at what point did you realize that your channel was starting to have an impact in
Yeah.
a way that people were taking notice, and that maybe it made them uncomfortable? I didn't really frame it that way when I first asked it, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is when did you realize that, wait, this is working, right?
Yeah.
It's making a difference.
Yeah, I would say then everything I mentioned probably applies, but I think even more so when I first began, I would come whenever I started like working and it is a lot of work, so the air quotes are kind of inappropriate, but whenever I went to work, I would essentially scour the internet for an interaction that I felt I wanted to talk about. And
Hmm.
um, just over the years, it's gotten to a point where I don't do that. I don't have to to look
Because
at
they're sending them to you.
it's always there. It's always right
Yeah.
there. Um, and and I enjoy that I can be uh present and available to help people that are in need. And in fact, it's gotten so big that um it's just too much, and there
Hmm.
needs to be like 30 people doing this,
Yeah.
um or there are 30 people doing it, and even all of us can't handle it, but
Yeah. Like, what was your actual, like, what was your why? What was the reason? Like, once you got past the point, so I'm going to make an assumption. I might be wrong.
Mhm.
My assumption is that your why was, I'm going to put this video about Colorado Springs out because if something happens to me, everybody's going to know about it. And then you started realizing that people were actually interested in the content. You were like, okay, every video I'm going to do is about this. And so, was that your why? Like, what is the reason that you still do what you do?
Yeah,
Because you don't have, look, your following's big enough now that you could slow way down if you wanted to, and it wouldn't probably affect you too bad. So
I
why do you keep
have.
doing it?
I have slowed down a lot actually for my own mental health. I used to do 7 days a week,
Oh, wow.
and that was no good for me. I slowed it down to 6, and then I tried 4, and that was a little too little. But I'm one of those guys that like has to always be doing something, whether it's
Yeah, I'm
work
the same
or
way.
a project or something like that. Um, but uh, but now it's gone down to 3 a week. But yeah, when it first started, it was definitely exactly how you explained it. It was all for selfish, self-seeking reasons. I, I my
Well,
wife and
first
I
of all, I
would
don't want you to. I wasn't trying to categorize your why as selfish. I was just.
no,
That's not what I was.
I
Yeah, I
get
don't.
that. I know. I'll take
Yeah. Okay.
responsibility for
Yeah.
that. Because I know it's true. I, it was an interesting interaction, but nobody learned anything from it. It was just kind of like watching a Karen video, um, of people raging out and like, ooh, so rage bait or
Right.
whatever you call it. There was no real educational value. Started off with the selfish, self-seeking, and then eventually, I didn't know a a lot about it, much of this. And as we spoke about before, there's still a lot of topics that I'm void of knowledge and have to do the research on, and it became just very interesting to me. and perhaps I should have studied law. That might have been a better path for me in life. But uh, now I do it, I guess. So
Yeah. Do you feel like, so for me, I think it's I derive meaning from the work.
yeah.
I really find it to be meaningful. I feel like I have the ability to have a much larger impact
Hmm.
with the work that I do than I can one case at a time.
Yeah.
And then as I wind down the sort of the bulk of my regular practice, what I feel like what I'm planning on doing is to start. I mean, being the I shouldn't say it like that. I'm going to be the Caucasian Ben Trump. Oh God,
Ben
let's
Crump.
delete
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna yeah, I'm gonna be. I've just come up with the name. It's gonna it's
Caucasian.
gonna be it's gonna be Cringeman
Benjamin
Cringeman.
Trump.
Instead of Benjamin Crump, it's going to be Cringeman Bump, because it's going to be cringy. But no, I think what I'd like to do is to be able to pop up anywhere
Yeah.
and make sure that I can have an impact. So I'm going to
Yeah.
start doing federal lawsuits.
That'd be
But I
sick.
take the position that criminal defense work is, if you sue the police, it's hard to be able to leverage relationships and get your clients favorable treatment in criminal defense. And so I take the position that it's hard to do both. You either have to be something I'm not, which is, Benjamin Crump, and be able to just do whatever you want, and nobody wants that smoke, which I'm not there yet. Maybe on my way.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day, but I'm not there yet. So I have to pick one. And what I've chosen to do is to just step out of both for now, build my following here so that gives me the freedom to do what I want and pick and choose so that I can be that. And
Yeah.
so that's my next thing. But I derive a lot of meaning out of what we do here. I think it's really important. And that's my process right now, is I scour the internet and I get a lot of videos sent to me, certainly not the level that you are, but I get hundreds
Yeah.
weekly. And I mean, a lot of them are interactions that I've seen. Hell, some of them are interactions I've already done a video
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
They just are not familiar enough with my library to know what I've done. But a lot of them are, stuff that but I try to talk about certain specific things. Like I really want to do a really in depth video on Rodriguez
Hmm.
because it's such an important case.
Yeah.
Um, and I've done one sort of a quasi Rodriguez. It was actually the one I emailed you about, the Eli.
Oh, that's
Um,
right.
by the way, Eli, just to give him a shout out, he wrote me an email and said that somebody watched my video, that one of the lawyers that he called, he sent them my video. And after watching my video, they decided to take his case on a contingency basis. So
That's awesome.
that's the kind of stuff that I really feel good about, is like that other lawyers are seeing my work and thinking, okay, maybe because of his background, he has a different perspective and can break this down in a way that I hadn't considered. Because
Yeah.
most lawyers are so, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but most lawyers didn't grow up in a trailer park in Appalachia fighting for food like I did when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like most of them didn't have to even have a job before they were a lawyer. And a lot of lawyers' first jobs were like clerking during law school, or like working a part-time deal in college or in the summer or something, summer associate, like not serious jobs,
Yeah.
not like the kind of stuff that you and I've done in our lives. And so that's the kind of stuff that really gives me like meaning, to keep doing this.
Yeah.
But
That
it's a privilege. It really is.
Well, I'm gonna piggyback on that because I'm gonna go all the way back to the military again. Sorry to keep bringing it up, but
That's okay.
and of course it's gonna tie in PTSD again. I got to talk about this more. But the military thing was interesting because I had to sell myself on it, even in the middle of it, that we were there fighting for freedom. The whole fight them there, fight them here type of thing.
Hmm.
And then knowing that that's not like true and coming home, then you're like, damn, you can only lie for yourself for so long until it really hits.
Right.
And then uh moving over into the fire service was a completely different aspect. At that point now I'm essentially doing the same job, but as a medic, um and getting these really rewarding calls where like saving a stroke victim or traumatic car accident, whatever the case may be. And those were very fulfilling, but they continued to add to PTSD. um because
Mm.
you see people in
Secondary
their,
trauma.
yeah, it's the worst moment of their life, and
Sure. And you're responsible for what happens to them too, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
or at
So
least you hold yourself responsible for what happens to them.
right. And so you have to brush off a lot of that, or not, or hold it in and wither away. But yeah, I would definitely say that there is I agree. There's a lot of really great outcomes in this. There's a lot of negative outcomes in this too. Sometimes it just doesn't go the way it's supposed to in in Dale's world. But um but yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Well, I take the position that you can find anything that you're looking for in life, and so if you want to see something negatively and you frame your perspective that way, you can find it. And then if you want to see the beauty in something, you can do that too.
it's whatever
There's
wolf you feed,
always
yeah.
what is it?
What it's always whatever wolf you feed.
For sure. Yeah, oh, yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, because you could feed the one that is the worst is not in your best interest, right? And or you could feed the one that is in your best interest. And sometimes you got a lot less to give that wolf.
Hmm.
You got to really dig deep into the cupboards to come up with something to even feed that wolf sometimes, but you're making a conscious decision. I think that's such a great analogy that you said that it's the wolf you feed because you're also starving the other one
Yeah.
because it's like pie, bro. There's only so many slices. And so if you have to really dig deep for something to feed the positive wolf, you are simultaneously starving the other one. And eventually it's going to work its way out to where you've got more to offer the positivity, right?
That's one of the genius things that my wife brings to the table. She came up with that. Yeah, where you have
That's
like
great.
the good and evil. My daughter has she's 11, so we're teaching her ethics and all that fun stuff. And so that's one that she uses with her, and it's very interesting. I think having kids might be uh to teach you how to grow up, you know, a little
Yeah.
bit, or give you an idea of how to mature in a way that you weren't able to because of whatever happened in your childhood. But yeah, that's something that she brings up also, as far as starving out the bad wolf and feeding the good wolf. The good wolf doesn't even need to eat half as
Right.
much as the bad wolf.
Right.
So
Right.
I think
That's
it's
an interesting
interesting.
way. And it's interesting too that um you what you said about parentage because
Mhm.
I believe wholeheartedly that being a parent is the single most important job in
Yeah.
life.
And the
And
hardest. Oh my goodness.
oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And in the same way that you take on the caretaker's role when you're responding to a call as a medic or a fireman, you also you're actually responsible for what happens to that child,
Hmm.
um, directly responsible in an unavoidable way. And I think that part of the learning process is that you cannot teach something that you don't understand unless you want to teach it improperly. And that's part of the problem we have in this world is that people are running around with a half-ass understanding of something and they're teaching it to other people.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem we have in this space.
Yeah.
That was part of the why for my channel was I see so much incorrect legal information and it's like, whoa, somebody needs to be on here straight, setting the record straight. But it is interesting because you have to slow down and fully understand something before you can teach it to somebody. And if you care about the education of the person that you are shaping
Hmm.
and what they become, you that's where you have to learn how to listen.
Yeah.
Had to learn where you have to learn how to observe the sort of lesson that God gave you two ears and one mouth so you can listen twice as much as you talk. I still haven't learned that, but
Yeah.
I understand how to say it to other people. Um, I was listening at least long enough for it to make
Yeah,
sense and
exactly.
resonate, right? But that's an interesting perspective that you had. I want to be respectful of your time, so I don't want to keep you forever. But I want to ask you about. Well, first, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview. I mean, it means the world to me.
Yeah,
You're
anytime.
when I remember when I saw a comment. I'd never reached out to you. In fact, the reason I reached out is because I didn't know you knew I existed until you commented on a video, man. I was like, holy shit, Lackluster just commented on my video. And I was like, I'm still poor, but I feel like I've hit the lottery. So I
Meanwhile, I was
really
just some
appreciate that, man.
loser hick in the middle of West Virginia with a gun.
Man, but
Uh,
thank you so much for slowing down and noticing other creators, and thank you for being willing to take the time. But I wanted to ask you about Um, Attorney Shield. How it started, what you want to say about it, how it's going, and what can it do for people, and what would you like to say to promote it?
Sure. Yeah, man, I do you know who or somebody in our space made an app, and I was like, hey, that's a great idea. I should do that. And so,
We the People?
yes, thank you.
Yeah, Abaya Israel made a We the People University app, which I thought was a brilliant idea at the time too.
Yeah, and so I was like, I'm gonna look into seeing if I can make an app and put quizzes and have it um film but appear as though the camera is off and that you have to put a pin code on to stop this and that, blah blah blah. I talked to so many different developers, and I didn't ask the community. I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want anybody in the space to help with it. So I went to like big companies that were, that's all they do is make apps, and it basically I was told can't be done. Okay, fine. So I gave up on it, and then a year or two later, Long Island Audit hit me up and introduced me to our CEO, David. And I was real hesitant at first, and then after talking to them, realizing and getting to know David, David is an awesome dude, and the passion that he had for the project, the ideas that he had came up with to be implemented, that have been implemented, that I was told by these massive companies would be impossible to do, he got done, and he has a ton more on the way. I was just like, yeah, this is the winning team right here. I'm jumping on. So I joined up with them, and the launch went really well. The company is doing great. We are looking at different avenues of how to expand it. Not necessarily the service set yet, though we're looking at different services to include with it as well. Um, but yeah, it's it's, it's doing good. I think it's a great tool. I think it needs some more of David's ideas to happen, and I think we'll see it in every vehicle on the road, like coming with your car as you buy it or something like it.
Wow.
Uh, it's a
So it's
possibility
going to be
anyway.
OnStar for con law, basically.
Yeah, it could be. And I
Yeah.
think there are departments. I know LAPD was playing with man, they had like two different versions. I don't remember one of them, but they're essentially like an R2D2 bot that comes to your window instead of a live officer. And now that you have Tesla self-driving cars, which are crazy to be in, by the way, if they have
Hmm.
ones where you sit in the back seat, they taxi you around, and there's nobody driving it.
Wow.
It's weird. Well, they're building those now with little R2D2s that are going to come do traffic stops with no human on scene at all. That's crazy.
Might not be a bad thing, right? Because
Yeah,
we screw everything up.
yeah, we'll
Human
see.
beings screw everything up.
But until they
Um,
start arming them.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. We have to be careful about that.
Yeah.
We've seen the movies, right?
Yes.
We've all
Terminator
seen our
2.
robot.
Oh man, it's all bad.
um, I would say the thing about the product that stands out to me the most, and the thing I think it really is its greatest superpower, is that it, in the same way, were you in fire service when tasers came out?
Hmm. I
Because I
I'm
was a
not sure.
policeman, and I remember that human behavior immediately changed when you started
Oh.
putting a red dot on somebody's chest.
Yeah.
The only reference point that people had for that was that in a movie, it was always cool for the bad guy to put a laser
Sniper,
on your chest. And right, exactly.
like they can
Their
see
only
the
reference
dot on
point.
their
So
forehead. Yeah.
yeah, so they immediately knew that something very bad's getting ready to happen to me. And the taser brought about sort of this instant change of behavior.
Yeah.
And Attorney Shield does that. It does it in real time. Now it's not perfect because it can't be perfect.
Yeah.
It's not an end all be all solution, but it is the best thing that anybody's come up with to do what it's trying to do. And I probably have a better analogy. It's probably closer to a body cam for your car
Yeah.
than it is OnStar, because it really is more about, it gives the same sort of transparency, as a body cam is supposed to, but it's an instant manifestation of a change in behavior by the police. And
Yes.
that's what I thought was just absolutely, it really surprised me. I thought people, they were just going to ignore it. Um,
Yeah.
and I've been so surprised and so pleased to see that it's done so well. And I'm really glad to hear that it's doing well.
Me too, because I mean, we put the like the community trusted us to put it out, so that was huge that they trusted me in
Yeah, that
Long
it
Island
worked.
to go for it because there's a lot of risk. I mean, it's one of those things. I can do these ad deals for Manscaped, shave your whatever, and all that, and earn quick easy money. But that this thing is one of those. I own stock in the company, so I don't see a penny unless it works. And I've
Yeah.
still never profited off of it and won't if it flops. So I still
Yeah,
hope
and
it
it may
does
be a
good.
while before you do, regardless of how it does, because
Yeah.
I'm sure it has a big return on investment. You don't create something like that on the cheap,
No, no.
and not get it to work anyway.
Yeah, and
So, well,
especially
where can people?
oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm gonna say too, the last thing, there's as far as dash cams and everything, they're coming out with 360, so you can see in every single direction, and stereo sound and all the fun stuff. And we're looking into even adopting it into the dash cam, so your attorney isn't beholden to you holding the phone, and so you don't have to
Yeah.
feel like you're doing that, because I know that can be intimidating to some folks, and it can give a negative impression from the cop as well. So we're looking into doing stuff like that so attorneys can see in every direction during the call. That's probably a ways off, but just a direction, one of the directions we're looking into.
So, where can people check it out? What's the best way for somebody to sign up for Attorney Shield if they want to take advantage of the opportunity?
It's on both iPhone and Android, and
Okay.
you can sign up and get a membership at attorney-shield.com. Easy.
Okay.
And now we
Awesome.
do monthly too, so that's good.
Oh, you do month. Oh, so, were you just on an annual plan before?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we actually changed about a year ago, like just after a immediate launch, but so many people asked for just monthly option, we did it, but it's kind of hard to find, so that needs to change.
Well, I can understand why people want to do it on a monthly because it's just, pr- just coming up with a couple $100 for a lot of people. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
out of
it's
the gate.
40% of Americans can't access $500 of emergency money. It's something like that.
Mhm.
So I get why they would do that, but there are going to be some people out there that don't want to do it because they want to see a benefit from it. But that's one of those things. It's like you want to have it, you want to have it and not need it, as opposed to need it and not have it. And if it's a successful product, it may never do anything for you other than give you peace of mind.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but that's cool. Well, man, thank you so much for taking time and sharing your story with us. And I really have enjoyed getting to talk to you, and I look forward to more conversations. And really, really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. So, thank you so much.
Likewise, you're gonna pass me up in no time, guarantee it.
Oh no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen. But I appreciate it, and I don't know. Maybe this interview, this opportunity for you, will help launch your channel into something substantial. Since I no, thanks a bunch, man. I appreciate you, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
all right, James.
See you. Thanks.